May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. Now today we have a guest, Marc Lesser. Marc came to Zen Center and, shortly after Shunryu Suzuki died. He has an interesting story to tell. It's a little different than a lot of, but actually everybody's a little different from everybody else. Marc was, he was like 10 years, something at Zen Center, and it's funny, when he arrived, he said, he walked in, he went, yeah, he said, this is worth, I think he said he heard a voice in his head or something. He said, yeah, this is worth 10 years of my life. And, he's very focused. He was the opposite of me. Like, I never thought about planning the future, career, money, anything, Marc is much more practical and focused. So anyway, after 10 years in Zen Center, he went to business school, but he met Zen Center, so he went back. And he's always had an involvement with Zen Center and with business, a very right livelihood type of business approach that actually is bringing what he has learned from practice into the commercial realm. But let me read from his website. His website is marclesser.net, marclesser.net. Well, I want to say one thing, because it's always good to plug a person's latest book. Finding Clarity is his latest book. He's written 5 books. And ZBA Associates is the name of his business. ZBA means Zen in Business Administration. That was his first book. Pretty far out, huh? Last thing I would have thought of. But it's wonderful what he's done. So anyway, I'm going to read from his website about Marc Lesser, and a very nice, handsome picture of him there with a shaved head. Marc Lesser is an executive coach, speaker, and Zen teacher. He is known for his engaging experiential presentations that integrate mindfulness and emotional intelligence practices and training. He's the author of 5 books, including Finding Clarity, How Compassionate Accountability Builds Vibrant Relationships, Thriving Workplaces, and Meaningful Lives, and CEO of ZBA Associates, an executive development and leadership consulting company. His podcast, Zen Bones, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Times, features cutting-edge interviews, supportive tools for creating more meaningful work, and potent mindfulness practices to develop yourself, influence your organization, and change the world. Marc helped develop the world-renowned Search Inside Yourself, program within Google, a mindfulness-based emotional intelligence training for leaders which teaches the art of integrating mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and business savvy for creating great corporate structures and a better world. He founded and was CEO of 3 companies and has an MBA degree from New York University. Marc was a resident of the San Francisco Zen Center for 10 years and director of Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, the first Zen monastery in the Western world. He leads Mill Valley Zen, a weekly meditation group. Then it says read more about Marc. I'm going to leave that up to you. And I'm looking at his Mill Valley Zen. That's at millvalleyzen.com. Wow. He makes, or he has made, nice, clear, simple websites. Not the hodgepodge that Cuke.com and ShunryuSuzuki.com are, except thanks to Peter Ford, who's been working with me for, I don't know, longer than I can remember. He has put a lot of order into it, but that's another subject. Okay, so that's enough of an introduction. So as soon as we've had our pause to meditate, let's give Marc Lesser a call. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And we'll be here to end the meditation or whatever and give Marc Lesser a call.
Hello, David.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
And you?
Yeah, good. Hey, listen, this might hang up Skype from here, but if it does, I'll just call you back.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of amazing that we can do this actually, huh?
Yeah, well, it usually doesn't hang up, but there's 60,000 people here for a big international water convention and over in Nusa Dua, and I think that's why the internet was a little slow.
Right. Okay. Well, so far so good.
So, hey, what's happening with you? What's new? What are you doing?
I am. I'm a grandfather. That's new. I'm actually in Missoula, Montana, right now with Lee, and my daughter Carol lives here with her husband and 2 little boys, and that's been very, very rich. I've been appreciating the work I've been doing. My weekly Zen meditation group, Mill Valley Zen, which was in person up until COVID, and then moved online, and it's been worked out so well. And I have people from other places than Mill Valley who now practice with me that I've kept it online, and I'm looking forward to going with a group to Tassajara this summer.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. That's what they do instead of having a guest season. They have teachers come for, how long are you going, for a week or 2 weeks?
5 days. Yeah, they're doing Sangha weeks.
Yeah.
Five nights at a time, and it's worked out really, really well. It's they don't need very much staffing, and Tassajara feels much more like a real practice place all summer. Even though I always loved guest season, and maybe I think at some point they're maybe start experimenting with more different models, different hybrids. But guest season takes significant staffing.
Yeah. I have many years of experience with guest season, but
yes, I know.
Zen centers, and pretty much any center or business, as the time progresses, they need more and more staffing. We used to run the dining room with 3 people. Last time I was there, they needed 6. And we used to run greens. Oh, the administration and the people in the office was like a fourth of what it was years later. So,
right.
Just get used to certain ways of doing things. I've always noticed that groups that make decisions just keep making decisions and adding things. And, priests add more ceremonies and more priestly things. And administrators add more administration. It's sort of hard to stop. My life's the same way.
Yeah.
So, I want to know what your what's the main program you have, or explain it.
Oh, you mean in the my Zen World program? Is that what you?
Yeah, in all worlds. In all worlds. You just tell me.
It's my life is rather again it's funny that what you're talking about, like, oh yeah, I've done that with my life. I have a regular Zen group. I do half-day sittings and one-day sittings. I am the co-chair of the Zen Center Elders Council, and I have a full-time job. I work. I'm still doing executive coaching and trainings in the business world, which I've been really enjoying a lot. And in some way, that's a core part of my practice, and it has been for many, many years, of this aspiration to bring, to translate practice into a way that feels useful in the world of organizations and work and business.
Yeah.
And I've always I also am glad that I also get to just be a Zen teacher where there's nothing about needing to. In fact, it's almost the opposite of needing to accomplish anything. Or, but I feel comfortable, bringing that paradox and that it's a little bit like what you're saying, guest season, or any of the things that any organization, whether you're a nonprofit or a Zen center, you still need to get stuff done. You still need to pay your bills. You still need to figure out, what the certain, whatever spirit you're working with. And, so that's a core part of, I like this going back and forth of being a Zen teacher in the Zen world and being I think of myself as a stealth Zen teacher in the business world, but lately it's getting, less stealth, because there's more and more, not only openness, but I think desire to find a way to bring practice into people's lives as leaders and into organizations. There's so much suffering in the work world. There's so much unhappiness and misunderstandings and lack of communication. And I think that Zen practice, offers actually some really potent practices that can help with people working better together. Like we used to do in some way. It's kind of amazing what we used to do Tassajara guest season, that it was pretty strenuous, demanding work taking care of guests, or at Greens, producing really high quality meals.
Yeah.
And with the aspiration to practice, right? To bring practice into the work of serving or cooking.
What's the name of your Zen group?
Mill Valley Zen.
So online, is it under Mill Valley Zen?
Yeah.
Mill Valley
It is.
Zen.
Mill Valley Zen. Yeah, it's just a simple website, a couple page website that just describes that. Basically, we sit online on Wednesdays, and there's some occasional half-day sittings. And every year I do a 3-month online practice period, January, February, and March. And people seem to really like, the structure of a 3-month container. And I get a lot more people sitting with me when I call it a practice period than just the weekly Wednesday groups.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I was just writing a thing about that. I said, I was saying, what's the difference between practicing and, like we were working? I said, what's the difference between just doing this and practicing? And we decided, well, people will do it for free, or they will even pay for it if it's called practice.
Right. So it's funny. I notice if I usually what I do, it's free, and it's just come whenever you want. If I say it's a 3-month practice period and it costs money, I get a lot more people.
Yeah. Well, I can understand that. It gives you some structure to relate
Exactly.
to.
Exactly. People like structure. But what's funny, though, is what I've noticed is that most people, they do my 3-month practice period and they're done. They don't keep sitting with me, and they don't come back to do another practice period because they feel like they've done it.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
I mean, that's not true of everyone, but it's like it's always puzzling to me that, like, I'll have 40 or 50 people doing the practice period, and then as soon as practice period ends, it drops off, and there's 10 to 20 people who come on my usual Wednesdays. Like, where'd they all go? What are they thinking?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I used to live with John Tarrant, and he would have vast numbers for his sessions. And
yes, right.
And they were pretty expensive. It seemed to me. And but it was twice as many who would come just to the Monday night group. That's interesting. Yeah. Well,
yeah, I've noticed I've been doing half-day sittings and one-day sittings in Mill Valley, and I get more people generally got a really nice. People want. There's something about like the structure and doing longer sittings. And those are on weekends. I think it can be harder for people who work, to sit on a weekday night, people especially with kids and jobs and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. 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 So when did it's called Mill Valley Zen?
Mill Valley Zen, and it started, I think this is probably, this might be our 15th year, actually. I think I started it in 2000. I think I started it in 2009.
Yeah, that's neat. Do you have anybody that teaches with you?
Occasionally, there's, I've done several Jukais and I'm, but not, it's a pretty, my way is pretty informal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of, and most of the vast majority of people who sit with me are generally, new to Zen, new to practice. So I don't emphasize the usual, the forms as much as many, it's not a formal Zen group. And yet, I feel like I try as much as I can to, bring in the as much of what I think of as genuine practice as I can muster. We tend to do a lot of reading of Suzuki Roshi. So I'd emphasize Suzuki Roshi's teachings,
mm-hmm.
Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and Not Always So, and Branching Streams, Flow in the Darkness are, those are, I'd say, our three core books that we.
Oh, really? Oh, that's neat. That's neat. Yeah. A lot of people, I hear Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind all the time. I don't hear Not Always So and Branching Streams much. And I think that's good. You use all three.
Yeah, I think they're just wonderful books that I describe them as they work for beginners and they work for the most, lifetime practitioners.
Mm-hmm. 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 And do you have a location for the group?
We were pre-COVID. We were sitting every week at the Homestead Valley Community Center.
Oh, yeah.
So I do our weekend sittings there still, but our weekly is online. So no, there's no location for the Wednesday night sitting.
That's of course much more common now.
And it works for my lifestyle. Well, it works for one is that now because so many of the people who sit with me don't live in Mill Valley. I have someone from Chile who comes fairly regularly, and people from the East Coast, and there's a guy from China who comes every once in a while.
Oh, that's great. That's really neat. Now, he's from the mainland?
Yeah.
Yeah. Things have gotten a little less Western Buddhism friendly in China in recent years. There was a translation of Crooked Cucumber in Chinese already to be published, and things changed, and then it couldn't be done. But so now it's published in Taiwan.
In Taiwan.
Yeah. So now, what's the name of your? I don't even know what to call it. Your more secular teaching or program.
It's I currently have my own. It's a it's a one-person coaching and consulting company, and it's actually named after, I wrote a book. My first book was called ZBA, Zen of Business Administration. Published,
Yeah, right.
Published in 24 years ago, and the name of my company is ZBA Associates.
Right. And so tell us about ZBA.
This is, I am, my consulting coaching practice, I work with, a variety of for-profit and non-profit CEOs and leaders. I'm working right now with a socially responsible bank. I do some work with universities, and I work with leaders who want to be more, sometimes they want to bring, more clarity, better communication, more compassion into their leadership styles. So I do a lot of one-on-one meetings, and I also do a fair amount of working with teams, helping teams to work, to be more aligned, to be understand each other better, communicate better. So it's a kind of, I like to think of it as bringing the best out in people. Often it involves getting people having a meditation practice, and a lot of what I think of as translating Zen practices and principles into more secular environments.
Do you talk about mindfulness?
Oh, yeah. So mindfulness and meditation have become very, very much, accepted and sought in many, many business places. But mindfulness is such a, as I'm sure, such a broad word. It can be used in a way that's quite thin and secular, but it can also be, you could use mindfulness to talk about the depths of Buddhist practice.
Right.
Non-duality and no gaining idea, and start bringing in, Suzuki Roshi's teachings, which is under the umbrella of mindfulness.
Right. And people use it differently. And I remember once Katagiri said, so this is a long time ago. This is like 70s. He said, when you talk about mindfulness, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think, like you say, it's like the word is an opening for more nailing down what you mean by it.
Yeah. I think it. I've done a lot of work around this. Another interesting word or expression is emotional intelligence.
Oh yeah,
right? And
sure.
And mindfulness, and one of the programs that I was developed and was teaching for some time, which I helped develop at Google headquarters with Norman. Norman and I years ago were part of a team that was developing mindfulness-based emotional intelligence programs at Google.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, very impressive. So,
so interesting. I sometimes, it's like these words, mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and even leadership. They're such, there's some differences, of course, but there's a tremendous amount of overlap, I think, in those words, especially mindfulness and emotional intelligence.
Right, right. It's interesting that when you went through those terms, and just thinking as we talk, I'm seeing the words as like doors that open up, then to be refined. What does that mean, and where does that take us? And it depends on who's talking and where they go with it. That's interesting.
You're reminding, as you're saying that, David, I can't help but think of Jane Hirschfield's two prose books. She's a master of language, and one of her books is called Nine Gates, and the other is 10 Doors. And they're really essays about language and using language as gates and doorways to better understanding.
Very, very impressive woman. So now, when did you first get some inkling in your life that there was, you wanted to understand reality better, or you weren't satisfied with what you were being taught, or whatever?
The early 70s. I think I was a freshman at Rutgers in 1970, and I feel like various things opened my world. One was I had a professor who was a colleague of Timothy Leary's, and he was getting me government grade LSD and helping and was mentoring me in hallucinogenics as a spiritual practice. And that was one of the things that happened. But also, I enrolled in a course at Rutgers when I was a freshman in French, German, and Italian literature in translation, and I was introduced to Kafka and Camus and Sartre and existentialism, and it just also was like opened up my world and my mind. And then I discovered reading, and I started reading, Abraham Maslow and Carl Jung. And then I discovered Alan Watts and The Way of Zen. And all of that kind of was building in me. And I got to a point where I felt like that was what I needed to be doing, not what was happening at college. And I made the trip to San Francisco, and shortly after that walked into the Zen Center, and there was a voice for me, a subtle voice that said, "This place is going to be worth 10 years of your life."
What year was that? When was that you walked?
That was 74.
74. Yeah.
Yeah. I walked into the building, and Ed Brown and Dan Welch were there, and I moved into the building shortly after that, and started at the time, as you probably remember, you had to, if you wanted to go to Tassajara, you had to save enough money to go there for a year and a half. And
is that right? You had to save enough money for a year and a half. Well, you could go in the summer.
Well, that wasn't, not back then. That wasn't, that wasn't my interest. I was told, you want to go to Tassajara, get a job.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I thought it was good. I worked downtown San Francisco in a law firm for a year, and then I was living in the building, and off I went. 1976. That was my first summer, and then practice periods at Tassajara.
That's interesting. You were living in the building. How long did it take you to be able to move into the building?
Not very long. I think when I first walked into the city center, I was living out in the Sunset, and I think I drove across town every early morning for a few months. I moved into the neighborhood, I think, for a few months, and then I moved into the building. So probably, I don't know, roughly 6 months from when I first walked in the door to when I moved into the building.
That's interesting to me. You said you couldn't just go to Tassajara in the summer to work. I never had to think about paying because I'd helped get it started, and
Right.
I had given money, and I never paid for anything. Actually, I don't remember ever joining or anything. It was, there were times where I'd loan money to Zen Center and I'd get it back in little dribbles. And then at some point the treasurer would notice I had a minus in their accounting. And I had to, we always had very strange. So I never thought about or had to think about it the way other people did. And they'd have to come up with things. I don't know about 74, but back in the 60s, maybe into 71, really just like $2 a day or something.
Right.
What was it in 74?
I think that I had to save about $1,000, which was which was a lot of money at that time.
Right.
And that was gonna pay for, a year and a half or 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So, now, so you show up there at 74. Who did you relate to? What was it like?
I have this memory of walking in. I was in my early 20s.
Wait a minute. I've got a problem. I do not understand. Here, I see it. Okay.
You okay?
My computer was gonna. I didn't know why it was running on battery, but I just switch.
Good.
Okay. Now, please say that again.
I have this memory of when I first walked into Tassajara. I went into the courtyard, and there on the porch of the kitchen was Steve Weintraub, who was the Tenzo, and Jordan Thorne, who was the Fukutan, laughing and just it was playing and laughing. And I remember thinking, I think I'm going to like this place.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Well, you have two opposites there with Jordan and Steve.
But they may be opposites, but they were really, they worked. There's something about that kitchen and kitchen practice that there's a spaciousness, and that allows even for opposites to find a kind of joy of working together, and then I got assigned. I found myself, I think, the next day in that kitchen. I was assigned to be the summer dishwasher, the summer of 1976.
You were the summer dishwasher. Now, there's two types of dishes. There's guest dishes and there's student dishes. Were they separate?
At that time, there were just a lot of dishes.
Is that right?
and they all flowed in the kitchen, where in the corner was the dishwashing area, and all the dishes were done by hand, and there was a sterilizer sink, and I that was one of my favorite jobs ever, was being the head dishwasher that summer.
Definitely. I've done a lot of dishwashing there. Yeah.
I always had assistants, and one of my most memorable assistants was Paul Disco.
Oh, really? My goodness.
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah, and we used to, one of the perks of being a dishwasher in the summer was after the guest meals, we would find a way for some of the leftover guest food to be put away where we would eat once the dishes were done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Paul used his architectural skills of he designed a way for the sterilizer, the flame from the sterilizer, he rigged a way to put leftover food to keep the food warm for after we were finished washing dishes, so we could sit down and have a nice warm meal.
That is really something. That is great. And so that's the way they still do dishes, isn't it?
No, now it's all, they have a nice, beautiful machine.
They have a dishwasher?
They have a very, a commercial dishwasher now out, in a shack. It's a whole separate room. Much more civilized than back then.
I'd go to Tassajara through the years for, especially in the 2000s, the late 90s and the 2000s, I'd go for 10 days in the summer a lot, and I'd wash dishes in the dish shack, and I would do guest dishes. And that was a position that was part of the dining room staff. So dining room was always happy when I showed up, and I'd always get it. We would, and it was neat because I'd see everybody, because student people would come by too with cups. And so I'd be able to say hello to everybody. And a lot of guests also who I knew would come by. And we would just, we'd clean it off, and then we'd put it in a machine. But it was a sterilizer. We'd already washed it with soap.
That's right.
That was up to the last time I was there, which was maybe 2010.
It's the same system these days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's been a while now. And then I spent, most of my time at Tassajara was spent in the kitchen. I had a whole variety of kitchen jobs, from dishwasher to baker to Fukatin to
Fukatin, the assistant to the Tenzos, the head cook.
Yeah, and when I was the assistant, the Tenzo was Tia Strozer. And then the next year I was the head cook, and my assistant was Gil Fransdale.
Oh, wow. Pretty neat.
Yeah. Gil, whenever I see him, he still calls me boss.
That's funny. Now, who did you relate to in terms of teacher?
It's interesting. When I was first at Tassajara, Richard Baker, of course, was the kind of the main teacher there, and I think, and then I didn't relate to many other people as teachers then. Maybe Ulysses, some. Ulysses was the Eno at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Steve Weintraub, some, who was the running the kitchen. But then Paul Rosenblum was the director when I first was there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mostly at that time saw Richard Baker as my teacher. But then I went to Green Gulch and started relating to Lewis Richmond as one of my core teachers then. Lewis was the Tonto, the head of spiritual practice at Green Gulch when I lived there. As well as Steve, and Steve Stuckey was the head of the farm, and I was working on the farm at Green Gulch.
What was your relationship with Richard Baker like?
Interesting question. I think I was. I think I both thought that he had some amazing strengths as a Dharma teacher and his ability to talk about practice. I think we were all a bit swallowed up in the magic of the time. There was a certain relating to him as though he were this enlightened being, and we were all unenlightened beings.
Mm-hmm.
At least that was one way that I would describe that time.
Well said.
Little by little, I'd say the veneer started to wear off, and I was close. I was close with people like Yvonne Rand, maybe some other senior people who were whispering in my ear that everything wasn't quite what it seemed there. And
I would say that would be happening starting in the 80s more, huh?
That's right. And then I was director of Tassajara 1983 when things all blew up.
Is that right? My goodness.
And I was actually both, not that I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
I was dismayed and I was relieved. It was like I could kind of see it coming, but mostly I think, I would say that I was also a good soldier. I was director of Tassajara. I had a job. I was married. I had a baby at that year. I had actually already decided to leave. I had publicly announced and told Richard the year before that I was going to leave Zen Center and go find my way out in the world. And Richard asked me to stay another year and be Tassajara director, and which I did. But my energy had in some way was already moving out to. I loved practice, but I couldn't quite see a future of staying at Zen Center, and many people around me were all becoming ordained as priests, and I kind of wondered, like, that's a beautiful thing, and I wonder what they're thinking, like, because especially at that time, people weren't becoming teachers. People were, working in the back of the bakery, or doing other, or working in the restaurant.
Right.
And I felt I felt a little out of step with many of my peers in that I felt like I felt drawn that I needed to find my place out in the world outside of Zen Center. And Zen Center, I loved practice, but Zen Center started feeling a little small or confined to me in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I left and went to business school, of all things.
Where'd you go?
I went to New York University, and the business school at the time was literally on Wall Street. That was one of the hardest times in my life, was leaving Zen Center, 1983, married, infant in tow, no money, no business, no work experience that anyone in the world could relate to. I got a job in New York as a waiter, and I was fired within 2 hours because I actually didn't really have. I figured, I'll figure this out. I used to serve in the dining room, but
that's different. That's different from being a waiter.
It was very different, as I found out very quickly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was the maitre d' of Greens for 2 years, they made me be a waiter the first day. I couldn't stand it. I really didn't want to be a waiter. So that was over, thank goodness. And then I was maitre d'. I was very happy doing that. As long as it was lunch. As soon as dinner opened up, and it was prix fixe and one party per table per night, it was just standing there. So I said, I'm not going to do this. I'll do dishes, like you were talking about dishes. So I started doing dishes, and Renee Detome did the host. Anyway, I can certainly relate to you weren't cut out to be a waiter. So what'd you do? How'd you survive? I mean, God, man, you moved you're in there in Manhattan.
I ended up getting a job with a consulting company that I was in school. Lee and I were living in her father's house out in Long Island.
Oh, okay.
So I did, we had a place, had a roof over our head. But I had to pay for school, and but I ended up getting a job for a consulting company part-time, and
well, how'd you get that? Did your Zen experience help you? I mean, like,
I think this was through a personal connection, and it was a job that, a whole lot of skill wasn't required. As I recalled, we were doing telephone research, and it was it was a part-time job that wasn't later on, when I was in business school, and I remember trying to get a real job. That was much harder because of my background, and my resume was just puzzling to people looking at my background.
Well, you've done well. Anyway, how long were you? How long were you in business school in New York?
Yeah, I was in business school for 2 years, and in New York for 3. And I was pining to come back. I missed my Zen Center friends and Zen Center community. And the person who helped me find a job in San Francisco was Bill Sterling.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
Bill wrote me. I might even have it, actually. He wrote me. Bill was quite the letter writer.
Yeah.
And he wrote me like this 5-page or 8-page handwritten letter. And in it were a variety of people and organizations that he was offering to introduce me to. And one of those people was a friend of his who was running a distributor of recycled paper, a company called Conservatory Paper Company.
Oh, yeah.
And
Alan.
and that was Alan Davis.
Oh, yeah. I loved Alan Davis. He was wonderful. That's right. I remember that now. And Mindy Kirshner.
That's my first real job.
Mindy Kirshner was there, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, tell me about that.
Oh, man. It was it was great. I really, it was a small company. It was Alan and maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 people. And I learned a lot. My job was selling paper to, progressive magazines and, like Sierra Club and Mother Jones and people who used a lot of paper, who wanted to use recycled paper. So I felt like I got really good training in selling stuff. And then I would turn around and buy the paper from paper mills. There were just a handful of mills in the United States that were making recycled paper at the time.
Yeah.
So it was a really great learning experience for me about buying and selling, which led to me starting my first company. I started a little publishing company called Brush Dance, which was named after a story that Harry Roberts used to tell called The Brush Dance.
Oh, wow. You want to tell that story?
Well, the basic of the story was that it's a story. It's a Yurok Indian healing. The brush dance is a healing ritual, and the heart of the story is that the Yurok Indians only had one law, which was to be true to yourself. And I thought it was just the perfect name for a greeting card and calendar company, brush dance, and the aspiration to be true to yourself, which is one way to talk about, what is the Zen practice anyhow? And, many, many ways to describe it, but one way to describe it is the aspiration to be true to yourself.
Yeah. Oh, you know what I remember is one of your cards quoted me.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it said, but you had to. Anyway, I remember that.
Right. It was a quote of yours from a book, probably.
And calendars, right. And Jordan Thorne had Turtle Press. He did calendars.
That's right. Yep.
That was different times, though, I assume.
Well, yeah, actually, he and I maybe overlapped a little bit. I ran that company for 15 years from.
Is that right?
1989 is when I started it, and then I left in 2004.
Is that right? My gosh. I'm gonna say something about Alan Davis, because I had worked for the Neighborhood Foundation for Zen Center. I got this recycling center started under the Fell Street exit to the freeway, I think, which was quite a task to get that done, because it was controlled by Caltrans. And so Kim Kaiser was head of the Neighborhood Foundation, and I met Alan and Mindy Kirshner because of the recycling stuff. I was going to recycling meetings, and I went to a recycling convention. It was very interesting. And Alan, I really respected, because a lot of people and a lot of cities and municipalities and stuff were collecting stuff, but they weren't creating markets. They needed markets. Right. And Alan understood that, not to collect the paper to recycle, but to create a market for it so people would naturally collect it because they could sell it there because there was somebody who would buy it.
Alan's a very bright guy. You know, I haven't seen him, but a good friend of mine sees him regularly, and he now lives in Sausalito, and still doing good things in the world.
Oh, that is wonderful to hear. That is wonderful to hear. He took me once to a meeting with, what's his name? Gary. He was running for president. Gary Hart. You know, the guy who was really looking like a hot presidential candidate, Democratic, until it was found he had a girlfriend on a yacht or something.
Right. Yeah, I can't think of his name either, but I think I know who you mean. Yes.
Yeah, so Alan took me to this meeting with him and people brainstorming about how to make him president and all that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway, I respected him and conservatory a lot. Now, one thing I think of when I think of you is World Without War. So tell us about that, how that got going, and you and Kaz Tanahashi is what I think of, and maybe Mayumi. Mayumi Oda was involved with Kaz in the plutonium-free future, which I admired.
Yes.
So I can't remember any details about World Without War. Costa Rica, I remember meeting people from there.
Right. That's right. And I think Kaz did write that. He was working on a book for many years about Costa Rica and the former president of Costa Rica as a model of a country without army. Kaz is amazing. There was a chunk of time. I don't know how many years I was hanging out very, very regularly with Kaz, and we were. Cooking up and talking about World Without Armies and other
World Without Armies, right.
Yeah, mostly though he and I were just hanging out with each other and having very, very over a several year period having very regular lunches and conversations, and I was mostly just listening and giving him. We were giving him ideas and trying to help him in some way. He just wanted someone to talk to about some of these ideas, and someone who had a little bit of experience out in the world. So that was delightful to. I love Kaz, and it's amazing to see that he just keeps doing this good work in the world.
Well, I went to I went to several meetings of World Without Armies, right? And one of them was at your house. I remember that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's where I met government officials from Costa Rica or something. I met at some point.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Do they still not have an army?
I don't think they do.
Yeah, good for them. Wow. Well, so is there? So you had it's breath dance, right? Breath dance business. What became of it? Is it just?
It still exists. It after I left, several years after I left, it got purchased by a big calendar company. So there's still they're basically a line of calendars that's part of a larger big calendar organization.
That's really interesting. Well, now, so we've got that. We've got conservatory. We've got ZBA, Zen business administration. You still call it that, don't you?
It's interesting. Is my stealth way. It's called ZBA Associates, right? And so it's just these three letters, ZBA. Now it's named after Zen of Business Administration, but the name of my company isn't Zen of Business; it's ZBA. You know?
That's cool. Now your book, the Zen of Business Administration, is that still available?
It is. You know, I've actually now, it's hard for me to even believe, but I've written 5 books now.
Yeah, I want to hear about them.
ZBA was my first book, and I think you can still get copies of it on Amazon. It's amazing. And my the book of mine that has done the best in the world was a book called 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader, and the subtitle is Lessons from Google and the Zen Monastery Kitchen.
Oh, that's very cool. Right. Right.
Yeah.
And when did that come out?
That came out in 2019, and that book was inspired by a talk that Norman did for Google engineers. And it was an off-the-cuff talk that he gave about 7 practices that people who are aspiring to become mindfulness teachers need to know. And that book was birthed out of me sitting next to Norman while he, off the top came up with what these 7 practices should be.
Oh, cool. Oh. And all right, what year did that come out?
That came out in 2019, five years ago.
Oh, wow. And ZBA, Zen is, it came out in 2000, right?
Yeah, maybe 2004, I think, 20 years ago.
Oh, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
All right, you got 3 books to go.
I wrote a book called Less, Accomplishing More by Doing Less, kind of about the religion of busyness in our culture. I wrote a book called Know Yourself, Forget Yourself, kind of stealing some Dogen words there. A book about embracing paradox. And my most recent book is called Finding Clarity, and it's about compassionate accountability. It's kind of some of the work that I do in the business world is helping organizations to work with greater compassion as well as greater accountability, or aligning around what does success look like, and what are we actually trying to do here, to be clear about what they're doing, but also to build cultures that are more trusting and loving, even. Very aspirational. My work in the business world is very, this high aspiration to have healthy, effective workplaces.
Yeah, that's well said. High aspirations. Good.
Without glossing over how messed up most of them are.
Yeah. Well, we need to have ideals to strive for at the same time, while just dealing with and accepting things as they are.
Well, this is Zen. I would say, and I think you would agree, but you can disagree if you want. There's some Zen is incredibly aspirational, right?
Yeah, it's both. You don't have just things as it is. and accepting it. I mean, that's a bedrock foundation. But
Yes.
then,
Yes.
then you're always trying to improve.
Yeah. And this idea of, I was, my group met last night, and we were reading from the talk from, I think it's the third talk from Not Always So, called Freedom from Everything, right? This great talk on, not being bothered by anything, and this aspirational practice, right, of appreciating everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Yeah. 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 One of the fundamental teachings of Buddhism is non-discrimination, but it doesn't rule out discrimination.
Right.
Yeah. And that's, the two sides of everything, and being able to practice both those, and to resolve, in a sense, paradox, and it's sort of in a non-logical, actually unexplainable way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, have you been involved in any other sort of social, cultural ventures other than the sort of aspirational work environment at World Without Armies? Is there anything I'm missing there?
I have been.
Yeah, go on.
An organization that was very important to me was called Social Venture Network, which I was involved with, and I'm still somewhat involved with. But I became a member of Social Venture Network, with people trying to seeing a business as a force for social change and for social good.
Yeah.
Ben Cohn was a member of that. Bernie Glassman was an early member. All of the socially responsible business, socially responsible investing funds, like Calvert and others, and that was a very important community for me. That socially responsible business network. I'm in a group now, actually, that of people who I met there. It's a group of, there's 8 of us that we were all CEOs of socially responsible companies, and we've been meeting once a month for, Elliot Hoffman is actually in that group, who started Just Desserts. Someone who used to run Mother Jones is in that group. And
who's the person who used to?
His name is Jay Harris. Used to be the publisher of Mother Jones magazine.
Yeah. Didn't a woman named Deirdre English or something like that start Mother Jones? Or
maybe I don't know the early history, but sounds like a familiar name.
I remember showing her around Green Gulch. Long time ago. Yeah. It was quite a magazine.
And I still feel very well, very much connected to the San Francisco Zen Center. And as I said, I'm the co-chair of the Elders Council, which is the group that selects the abbots. And,
yeah. Well, you did a good job, I think. I have no complaints against any abbots, but Mako.
Yeah, there's three.
Mako was here for
Yeah,
a
three.
month last year, and we really like
Right.
her. Tough job. Tough job. There's a lot of demands
and
on people.
Right, and three fabulous abbats right now: Mako and David Zimmerman and Jiru.
Yeah,
out of Green Gulch.
Yeah. All three of which I was very pleased to see. Yeah, and I've had some contact through in recent years with all three of them, so it's neat. Who's your other co-chair of the Elders Committee?
Nancy Petrin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the problems that Zen Center, or one of the areas, it's not one of the areas that Zen Center has to deal with, or does deal with so much these days, is what's it called? Diversity, equality.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And it's full of it seems like a minefield to me at times, that it seems to get out of balance, but then you don't want too little or you don't want too much, but it's not one thing. It's this whole field of people becoming aware of areas where we should pay attention. And well, do you have anything to say? It was very vague of me, but do you have anything to say about all that?
I think that I work with a lot of organizations, and it is a very, I'd say, difficult, challenging, and important issue everywhere. Not just at San Francisco Zen Center has its own. Every organization has its own particular challenges and opportunities, but look at the history of. If you look at the history of our country, and the whole. Equality and racism, and although I have to say, I was meeting today with some executives of a bank that I've been doing work with, and there's also I think the workplace is also a really powerful and important place to work on and improve some of these issues. Again, aspirational, and at the same time, there's a lot of real issues and problems with racial inequality, and the way that we, the lack of equality and the racism that is still very much, alive in our country and in our culture.
Yeah, and the discrimination against people that are different in any way, and it basically just a lot of tribalism and groupism.
Yeah.
And it's happening in various directions. It happens here in Indonesia, of course, although I'd say Indonesia's not experiencing the at least right now, right? The the sort of polarism and sort of frightening. America's in a rather frightening place right now. It's really unsure what's going to be happening in the future.
Yeah.
There, and it's not like that at all here. It's pretty stable, but David Zimmerman lived here, studied here,
right,
and it depends on when. If you look back in the history, they've had some very the very difficult periods. The term "run amok" is Indonesian.
Right.
It's not Philippine. And so it's a problem for every culture, the struggles between different factions and stuff. I don't want to typify it. I don't want to describe too much now.
Well, there's some interesting, studies in science about how we feel a lot less. It's harder for us to relate to and feel others' pain for people that are not part of our own, people who we think look like us or think like us. And so I think it's, again, a great, another important place where I think practice can have a real positive effect is training ourselves to not be caught by those.
Right. Yeah, I think of Edward Kanse, the great Buddhist scholar, who said Buddhism is, completely not racist, that it recognizes that all people are there's a tremendous amount of equality, sort of an absolute equality in Buddhism, actually among all beings. But Kanse himself, and he would say so, did have very definite prejudices that would come out when he talked.
Right.
So what do you think about it seems to me the two biggest threats? I mean, we're worried about the future of democracy and that sort of thing, but the threats of nuclear war and climate change actually pale. Everything else pales before them. What do you think about? What do you think about either one of them?
I would agree. I think we so underestimate, I think, both the threats of both of those. And it's funny, we humans, it's scary, our ability to avoid and deny, and even like looking at, I think of when COVID came to the United States and, Trump's response and the Republican response to COVID, like, man, like, and yet there's like it had no repercussions and no memory. And this guy,
that's right,
that this guy might be president again, despite in some way you could look at it and say this was a complete and utter failing, a complete and utter denial and lie in how he approached COVID. And in some way, it's a complete and utter lie how our country is approaching the nuclear threat and climate change.
Yeah.
And scary as hell. No one's going to do anything about it until there's some major debacle. And it feels like, well, climate change is one of those where, I saw on the news the flooding in Brazil where like 1 million people lost, had to leave their homes. And it barely makes the news though. All we care about is, Donald Trump and his relationship with a porn star. That's the 24/7 news here in the United States.
Yeah. I go through periods where I don't look at any news. Well, I go down Washington Post headlines, but I go through periods, long ones, where I stay away from at least American news. I'll look at Al Jazeera, which is good international news, BBC, Guardian, but But then I'll get caught up in looking at American news. It's sort of addictive because it is real stuff that's happening and that matters. But it's disturbing, and I have things I want to do. I don't want to have a disturbed mind that gets in the way. And also, I'm really not doing anything to help. So This morning I went straight from Spider to Solitaire to email. And that's when I might look at news. I never spend too long on it. So what do you think's going to happen with this? Like the nuclear thing is something. There could be an accidental nuclear war. It could happen just so precipitously we wouldn't even know. But climate change is like slowly coming on, and like you say, we're really not doing enough about it. What do you think? What do you see?
Yeah, I don't. I've been reading more history lately than I ever have, and it makes me just so clear that the future is impossible to predict.
Yes.
And impossible sometimes in amazing positive ways, and sometimes in impossible horrible ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we have no artificial intelligence. May be this incredible blessing, or it may be this incredible curse.
It was one of Stephen Hawking's last warnings was about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But go on, I interrupted you there.
No. I mean, when it comes to climate change and the nuclear weapons, it just feels like it's a question of it's almost like a question of when are things going to get, are we going to be surprising? It's hard to see how there's going to be positive turnouts about either of those issues. So scary, both really scary.
Yeah, that's true. I think though your aspirational approach is good.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it doesn't help it's easy, we humans also easily can catastrophize things, right? It's easy for us to imagine horrible things happening. And that's probably good, it's for our own survival. But to me, I love, part of what I think Suzuki Roshi brought was the ability to be aspirational right in the midst of, he was someone, think of the horrors that he lived through. He lived through the nuclear devastation in Japan and many other.
Yeah, well, the devastation of the Japanese army brought on Japan was a much bigger deal in his life. And brought on in he didn't know what Japan was doing in China or around the world. They had no idea what horrible things they were doing, but he knew what a horrible mess they'd made of life in Japan, and it was a nightmare to live in. And he did the best he could in the circumstances, but he said he thought there would always be war, but that we should always work to eliminate it.
Yes. Well, David, we've covered an awful lot of territory here on this conversation. And
we have,
it's
indeed.
it's really nice to connect with you and to hear your voice. It's been a while, and I continue to appreciate the good work you do on Puke.com, and are you working on? Are you doing any more? You have another book coming out?
Yeah. Tassajara stories.
Great. I look forward to it.
Yeah, I'm just finishing it up now. It's been many years in the making. Not full time, but it's full time now, sort of.
Yes. Good.
Yeah. Well, great. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, but you didn't go away, so I'm glad we did, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Mark.
Yes.
Great talking with
David,
you.
Reaching out.
Yeah.
Okay. And you take care.
You too. All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So thanks a lot, Mark. Marc Lesser. Oh, I want to say one thing. He's the co-chair of the, the group, he's the elders, he's co-chair of the elders group, or the elders council of the San Francisco Zen Center. And he said, and one of the things they do is pick the habits. And I said, well, you sure did a good job recently. I didn't mean to imply that they were replacing habits that hadn't done a good job. The others were good too. I just think, it was time for the others to move on. There's term limits for habits, something I was involved in creating. So thanks a lot, Mark, and keep up the good work in worlds I have not touched, except as a customer. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita, Feline Manis. And soon, dear lovely Katrinka will return from Raja Ampat, Rajampat. Check that out on Google. It's an island that's off West Papua New Guinea that where the ocean life hasn't died out significantly, and where the coral is not bleached, not yet. So it's just supposed to be amazing. So she and her best friend went there for a week, and she said the snorkeling was stunning. And I know people that have gone diving there. Katrinka said 10 times better than anything around Bali. So, hey, Bandi, Manis, and I'm sure I speak for Katrinka when I say we're all wishing you and yours a grand awakening.